Dear viewer, thank you again for tuning into my channel called The BPO Theory. My name is Peter and this is my second video in this channel titled What's Wrong with Unification? Especially of course in physics. In my first video I explained that I regard a BPO as the most basic and the only basic particle in the universe, and I explained how these BPs interact. In that first video I also claimed that nobody ever had the ambition to reduce the so-called particle zoo to only just one basic particle. There was some reaction to that claim, for example on LinkedIn, by a colleague physicist called Roel. He argued that many physicists had tried unification. He specifically named string theory and the so-called supermultiplets as being one particle systems. So that's his claim. In string theory, for example, they try and describe all particles of nature as variations of some sort of vibrating string. So I'm glad with the remarks of Roel because they give me the opportunity to explain the difference between my BPO theory and these other theories, so that you, dear viewer, will have a grasp at how innovative the BPO theory really is. I will address the issue of unification shortly. First, I would like to make a comparison between a historical theory of planetary motion and field theory. Then I will return to unification again. Now, Ptolemy was a scientist of the 2nd century, and he produced a model of the planetary system like we see here, with the Earth in the center, and circling around the Earth were the planets, and even the Sun. And he could not actually produce very accurate predictions with describing these motions of the planets as pure circles. So he used smaller circles on these circles, and he called them epicycles. And these epicycles produce accurate results. And he could even, if the results were not accurate enough, produce extra small, even smaller epicycles on these epicycles. And this all worked perfectly mathematically. And here we have the Copernican system, where of course the Sun is at the center and the Earth does not revolve around the Sun in a perfect circle, but in an ellipse. And the reason why this is a better model was not that it produced more accurate results. In fact, when this model was first proposed, it had even produced less accurate results. But the reason why it was better was that it was closer to the real physical events underlying these motions of the planets. So to Ptolemy theorists, every planetary motion looks like circles, whereas the Copernican system tries to describe what is actually going on, what the underlying physical processes are. So the Ptolemy system that we have today is called field theory. Everything has become a field. Gravitation is a field, electrical phenomena are fields. So then, what is a field? You cannot see a field. You cannot directly observe it. You cannot see the strength of the gravitational field of the Earth, for example. The only thing that you can do is put an object with a specific mass in this gravitational field and measure how strong that mass is attracted to the Earth. And from that you can infer the strength of the gravitational field. So nobody ever observed a field. It is just a theoretical construct. And what a field does is to make interaction between objects an indirect thing. Space becomes an intermediary between objects. So first, one object affects a property of space somewhere in between, and then the other object reacts to these spatial changes once it is in that specific location in space. And we call the sum of all these spatial changes as performed by an object a field. In fact, the difference between Newtonian gravitation and Einsteinian gravitation can be simply explained by how they treat space. Newton considered two objects to interact in a more or less direct manner, with space as a neutral in between. Whereas Einstein put space in between two objects as an intermediary with very specific properties, namely with so-called tensors that define a gravitational field. Now, since Maxwell's extensive use of fields for his theory on electromagnetism, the field idea has taken on immense hold on physics. You see that many quantum theorists suddenly find that a particle, like for example an electron or a neutrino, is only an excitation in a field. And the strings of string theory are also just some perturbations in a multidimensional space. So with fields, we can actually think objects away. The Earth and we ourselves on it are just a set of aberrations in space. Some spots of spatial and temporal turmoil in an otherwise tranquil universal space. I assert that the only reason for making everything a field is convenience. It is very practical to do so. We have this enormous mathematical machinery to describe fields. We have Hilbert spaces and such that enable us to endlessly manipulate the properties of space, just as Ptolemy could endlessly put on yet another epicycle in order for his calculation to conform to observation. And if you only have a hammer, everything looks like a hammer to you, or like a nail to you. If you only have field theory, everything looks like a field to you. I fear it is as simple as that. I even saw a video lately on the YouTube channel Veritasium of another colleague of mine, who I hold in high regard, by the way, who argued that if you have a light bulb powered by a battery, the energy from battery to bulb is not actually conveyed by the attached wires, but by the fields in between battery and bulb. Everything has become a field, really. Now back to the issue of unification. If you look very closely at all contemporary attempts at unification, you will see that they try and add just another layer of field theory on existing layers. Imagine that someone tells you that all objects in nature are actually perfect spheres. The reason why they all look different to us is that space has been distorted so as to produce the object. So a guitar is in reality a perfect spherical object. It is just that its materials have contorted space in such a manner that we perceive it as a guitar. And your partner, with whom you make love at night, is also perfectly spherical. It is just that the contortions of space and time reshaped it into the forms of a human being. On the basis of such an abstraction, we could easily make a theory that is perfect in every mathematical way. We would then have built a unifying abstraction layer over all objects, turning us all into perfect spheres. This is about what string theory does and what these supermultiplets do. They add another abstract mathematical layer on top of a set of already complex theoretical constructs. That is the modern strategy of unification, all based on field theory. You can unify all objects by declaring them to be perfect spheres and then throw a lot of math at it. Just like you can declare all particles of nature to be strings and then throw some extra spatial dimensions and some math to it, and there you have your unification. Now, what is so different in BPO then? Well, BPO does not add another layer of abstraction on top of existing theories. Instead, it describes concrete physical phenomena underneath these existing theories. BPO tries to describe what is actually going on there, as the Copernican system tried to describe what was actually going on. Whereas string theory and others alike are higher order theories, BPO is a basic theory. To make another comparison, we have, for example, computer languages at various levels. At the most basic levels, we have the machine instructions telling the logical unit of a computer what to do, what arithmetic to perform. Those are all bits and bytes. Then on top of that, you get a second generation of languages with so-called assemblers. Those are actually only some machine instructions grouped together in a handy manner and call that an assembly. And on top of these, we have third generation languages, and there we see statements like if, then, and else emerge. Types of human logic show up. You know these languages as Python, Java, C++, and so forth. But on top of this third generation, a lot of other layers are built, like graphical programming interfaces and, for example, the large language model or ChatGPT. And not everyone is aware that as you are chatting with ChatGPT, you're actually doing some programming on a higher level. Now imagine that for some reasons we run into big problems on these higher layers. Somehow the progress in programming has stalled. Meanwhile, nobody knows anything about machine instructions anymore. Everybody programs in these higher order languages, and they keep on putting layer on layer in order to solve occurring problems. Now comes along a fellow who says that there is something wrong at the most basic level, that the set of basic machine instructions is flawed and should be revised. His colleagues now tell him that such has been already addressed by many programmers, for example by adding an abstract string layer that can model all potential machine instructions. So you see that these higher level programmers will have a problem in understanding the reasoning of this basic machine instructions fellow. Now with the BPO I went back to these basics, and my attempt at unification does not come from integrating existing theories, but from describing how the things we observe in our day-to-day life emerge out of basic underlying physical phenomena. It is curious that quantum theories make a comparable claim. They say that our world is a macro scale that emerges out of quantum phenomena at far smaller scales. And the difference is that they cannot put forward the actual physical processes that created transitions from quantum scale to macro scale. They only have a set of abstract formulas like the wave function and a lot of abstract notions like entanglement, probability distribution, wave function, collapse, adding just extra complexity and a lot of ambiguity to their theoretical umbrella. It is all field theory that they do. I assert again, so that you can pin me down on this one, that quantum mechanics does not contain actual physical processes out of which higher levels of reality on larger scales can emerge. BP, on the other hand, actually describes what is going on there at this basic level. BPO describes the basic building blocks of nature as well as their interactions in all detail. And in doing so, BPO simplifies instead of adding more complexity. There is nothing left spooky anymore. So unless you prefer spooky and complexity more, BPO is an improvement. So there you have the difference. Perhaps you can already grasp a bit how innovative BPO really is. You can read more about it by following the link to my book below. And if you like this video, of course, do not forget to give me a thumbs up, tell your friends all about it, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you again for tuning in, and I hope to see you next time. Bye bye.